Hey, this is Seth. I teach people how to get jobs in digital marketing with no previous experience or education. And in this video, I want to tell you a story about the time that I yelled at my boss and got a raise. This is from years ago, and I wanted to inspire you to be confident and speak up for what you deserve at your job, if you have a job. So this is long before I discovered digital marketing. I was still working terrible office jobs, and I won't mention the actual company, but basically what happened is I got hired at this company. I actually liked the job at the time, but I was a temp, and I was getting paid a certain amount of money. I think it was like $15 an hour, maybe 17. And I got along well with the supervisor, and after a couple months he said, okay, I'm going to bring you on full time. And I said, okay. He said, next couple of weeks, great. Well, a month went by, and I kept asking kind of like timidly. I was like, well, when are we going to actually hire me so I can get the benefits and the higher salary? And he kept blowing me off. In the meantime, I found out another temp who had been hired was getting paid more than me, and I started to get really aggravated. And then through some inter-office gossip, I kind of started understanding what the people around me were getting paid, and I started to get really cagey. I started thinking, they're gonna offer me, and it's not gonna be enough, and should I look for another job? And this guy's been blowing me off. And what happens is, this is what happens at any job. I know this happens to a lot of people, is that you have an issue, you have a grievance, you have something that needs to be discussed maturely, openly, and directly, but you don't do it. You fester, or you shove it down, or you feel like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble if I say something. So this is what happened with me when I did that, instead of being direct. I got so anxious and so, I was having anxiety attacks, because I was getting so emotional about the fact that I really needed to get hired or to keep looking for other opportunities, and he kept telling me they were going to hire me and they didn't. And then one day I finally was like, okay, by Friday, today, before the end of the day, I'm going to talk to the boss. I was psyching myself up. I was nervous. And then what happened at 3 p.m., I'll never forget this. I saw him leave. He left early for the day. And I asked one of my coworkers, I said, what happened? Where did he go? So he's got some appointment. He's leaving early. And I was like, what? I had planned this big, I wouldn't say it was, I guess I wasn't thinking of it like a confrontation, but I was going to really share my, I was like, look, you really need to you got to hire me soon. And you can't keep telling me it's going to be next week, it's going to be next week. So here's what happened. I actually ran down the stairs to the parking garage where I knew where he was getting into his car. And I saw him getting into his car, and I sprinted across the parking garage and ran right up to him and was like, stop! And he was totally shocked and didn't know what to think. And I started yelling at him, this is not something I recommend, but it was all that suppressed emotion. And I know so many people experience this. They might not do what I did, but you're walking around holding onto this ball of anger or ball of frustration about some issue. You don't want it coming out this way. But here's what happened. I basically yelled at him and was like, you've been telling me for weeks you're going to hire me, you didn't hire me. What's the deal? Are you going to hire me or not? And I know what all the other people are, and I kind of just went on this tirade. I kind of blacked out. I don't remember what I said, except he started getting really mad at me. And then I demanded, because I knew what the company was doing really well. I said, I want you to hire me at this amount. It was I want $60K, which was much higher than anyone else was making. And he looked at me, he was like, oh, you're crazy. And he's like, and you were asking other people about their salary. He's like, not only are you going to be fired, I'm going to go to your temp agency. I'm going to make sure that no one else hires you. And I remember we were yelling at each other in the parking garage. And then he drove away and I went back to my desk. And I remember just feeling completely in shock. What did I just do? Now, I had been fired from, or more realistically quit, so many jobs that I was like, okay, I understand. I just need to start with another one. It's fine. So I was okay, but I was a little depressed. I was like, I thought this was going to be the job I could stay at for a while, put away some money. Then I went back to my desk, and I remember starting to pack up my stuff, and I was just thinking, boy, that went probably as bad as I could have ever anticipated. Then To my shock, about an hour later, I get a call on my like flip phone. This is years ago, and it's the supervisor. And he said, "Look, I know things got a little heated, but I just want to let you know that if you still want to come in Monday, you're welcome to come in. And I'm sorry for yelling." And I was like, "Really?" I said, "Okay." I said, I'm sorry I came at you like that. I was totally unprofessional." We apologized to each other, and it was very emotional. And then I came in Monday, back to work. End of that week, I got the job offer, and it was for not what I had asked for, but it was like the second highest salary in the department. It was higher than I had made to that point, in the 40s, and I had never made more than 30K at that point in my career. And I I would say it's a lesson that you should not corner your boss or your supervisor in the parking garage and yell at them. But what it showed me was being direct and standing up for yourself, being confident. It plays well. It plays well. And if it doesn't, you're not in the right job. If you're direct with your supervisor or the person you work with, and you're standing for your value, and then there's like a big problem, that means you're in the wrong place. But I learned in that particular job, the more for like bosses, who kind of are in that position where they like power, this guy, at least in my experience, responded more to confidence and being direct than a lot of the other coworkers who were more kind of like ass kissers, like a little more, they had that kind of like, I want to please the boss attitude. They were a little bit of suck-ups, they were looking for the approval of the boss versus me, through whatever reason. Because it's funny thing is, when I was hired, I was like, that's actually why he hired me. You guys wouldn't believe this. When I got hired at this job, we didn't even have a formal interview. We went out to coffee, and he just talked to me about this particular field. It wasn't digital marketing, it wasn't film, I won't say what it was, but I didn't know anything about it. So during the interview, I just let him talk. And I was quiet, and I just nodded my head, and I would listen. And he hired me, because he wanted a guy who was, at the time, he wanted someone who was quiet, and who he could teach, or I would say lead or boss around. And the funny thing was, when I started to turn around and be more direct with him, I thought for sure he would have fired me, or he would have been disappointed because he wanted somebody who was more submissive. But he respected me more, and actually I was put up for promotions when I was more direct. And there's a lot more to that story than that, and that was, again, years before I found digital marketing and eventually left that field. But the point is, guys, if you have some issue at work, whether you're in the field of digital marketing or some other job, be direct and say what you need. Don't let it fester. Don't swallow it and say, "Oh, I don't want to get in trouble, I don't want to get fired." I feel like at any job, you should always be prepared to lose that job. You should have a backup plan, or at least be mentally and emotionally be like, okay, this is my safety net. That's what the great thing about digital marketing, why I love it now, is like, if you lose one job, you get another job in a couple of weeks, because the skill set is so in demand. So if you're in digital marketing, this is easy. You should have no fear at your job. I've talked with some people who have that, I'm like, it's a mental thing, because it's like, if you're working in digital marketing, you have 1 year experience in SEO, PPC, and your company's having some issues, leave, or directly talk to your supervisor. Kayla was talking about that. She had a job she really liked. She was doing really well there. She loved her supervisor, but they wouldn't give her work at home, and she needed to work remotely because she has a sick grandma, and she didn't want to risk bringing COVID to her grandma, and they would not accommodate her. She was very direct. They wouldn't accommodate her, and so she got a better job. And that's why I think these skills are so powerful. So you never have to be at the mercy of some supervisor. But if I'm not saying you should always quit your job or yell at anyone. I'm saying just be direct. It's worth whatever you're afraid of happening to happen, rather than sitting in the fear and all that discomfort. I could have probably, I'm looking at that example, and I'm like, I could have easily just sat on, when I saw he left early for the day, I could have easily just said, oh, okay, I missed him. I'll get to it on Monday. And, who knows? Maybe I would have been more calm about it. But everything I was afraid of happened initially. I lost my, temper. I was completely unprofessional. He told me he was going to fire me. And then it worked out. Now, if I had actually ended up staying fired, I would have been okay too. But for you guys, none of you guys are going to do what I did. I get that. You're not going to scream at your boss. But the problem is, some of you guys, I know the way you relate to your bosses, supervisors, you have it's such a mental, psychological trauma from school where we were afraid to speak up or give the wrong answer and we want approval, that some of us in our own heads, we feel like we're yelling when we simply stand up for ourselves. Like if you need a pay raise or you've been there for a certain number of times, it's time for a raise, or you need some time off or whatever it is you need to discuss, you may feel emotionally like, oh God, if I ask for that, it's like I'm yelling at them, I'm being bad somehow. That's what I'm referring to, guys. You gotta stand up for what is, even, especially in this environment, you gotta stand up for what you deserve. And if you're in a field where you just can't do that, like Andrea, who was in that healthcare field where it just wasn't even possible, get new skills. Get skills that give you the power. In-demand skills give you more power because you have more options and you are more valued in those positions. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was provided you with some value and insight, and feel free to leave comments or questions below.